Greetings and welcome to another Lessons with Odin. On this episode, I will be showing you how to make this adorable pagoda pendant. I featured this piece in my February unboxing video of the beater box, and this is what I came up with for the materials that I found inside. If you want to check out that video, I will leave links down below or in the little corner over here. This piece is kind of interesting because I have kind of two different sides to the piece, and the materials will also depend on what you wanted to do with it. So I have one side which is made out of 4 spikes, and it has more of a square profile to it, like so, especially if you fold out the spikes. And the small side has more of a diamondy shape, which is kind of cool too, and it uses bicones instead of spikes. And you can do both sides like this, or both sides like this, depending on what you want to do. I'm going to be showing you how to do one of each, so I'm just going to pretty much copy the exact same thing as I did here. So for this project you will need 4 to 8 baby spikes, again depending on what you are going to do. These are the 5 by 8 millimeter spikes, and different manufacturers kind of do different things with them, but anything tiny will work. You will also need 1 7 by 17 spike. These are the larger sizes. You will need 8 to 12 4mm fire polish beads. I will be using these interesting old steel ones from back2bead.com. Highly recommend you check them out, because they have some spiffy finishes on their beads. You will also need 17 to 22 4mm bicones, again depending on what kind of project you're making. For 2-hole check tile beads, you can probably use Tila's as well if you like the sharper edges, but I will be using check tiles in this round. You will also need Super Duo beads. I have not tried this design using twins, but feel free to experiment and tell me your results down below. I will actually be using 2 colors of Super Duo, so I'll have 4 of another color. That's kind of what I did for the top here. I have 1 color just hanging out on the top. It's purple, while I have the rest of the piece in gold. You will need size 11 seed beads, as well as size 15 seed beads. You will also need 4 S-hooks. Now, you can buy these, or you can make them yourself. I had these gold ones on hand, so I used those, and then I didn't have silver, so I made these silver ones. These are pretty simple to make, and you can kind of figure that out, but if you'd like me to make a video specifically on how to make them, let me know in the comments down below, and I will make that happen. You'll also need 4 head pins, or pieces of wire, so that you can hang a couple of your bicones. And of course, your needle and thread. I'm using a size 12 needle, with some shitty Nymo that I hate. Let us get started! Alright, so I've already taken the liberty of attaching my links to my Super Duos and my 4mm bicone down here. What I've basically done is I've taken a bicone and put it on a head pin, or made my own head pin, and I did this for 4 pieces, and set them aside. Let me know if you'd like me to make a revised link video and wire shaping video for jewelry links and stuff like that, and I can make that happen as well. But I took my S-link, and this one I made out of 22 gauge wire, and I'm going to make sure that I make one with a small end and one with a larger end so that the Super Duo can fit inside. I'm going to take the larger end, slide on a Super Duo, like so, and then close the bottom loop. Then I'll just take my head pin with my bicone on and open it up and slide the small loop of my S-link and close it up. I'm going to do that for 4 of my bicones and set them aside for later. Now we're going to work on the center of our lantern. What I'm going to do is take one of my tile beads, pass through the first hole, go down the second hole, like so. Then I'm going to tie an overhand knot with my working thread and my tail, so that we end up with that. Then I'm going to pass back up through the next hole, Then we're going to continue on with the ladder stitch. And I've got 5 size 15 seed beads on my needle, and then I'm going to pass back around and up through the same hole we started from. Going to pull tight so that we end up with a stripe of seed beads over the side of our tile bead. Going to pass back through those 5 seed beads once more, then back up through the tile bead and down the seed beads once more. Then I'm going to thread on 1 tile bead and pass back down through those size 15 seed beads so that we end up with that. Then I'm going to pass through the next hole of the tile bead that we just added, then go down the second hole. We're going to pass up through the first hole again and down the second hole. I'm going to add 5 size 15 seed beads and pass back around the second hole of the second tile. We're going to then reinforce and repeat these steps until we have 4 tile beads and 4 strips of size 15 seed beads. And that is what you end up with. Do yourself a favor and don't reinforce this last set of size 15 seed beads so that we can make this next step much more easier. We're going to zip these together so that we form a loop. Currently my thread is coming out of the top of this last set of size 15 seed beads. So I'm going to fold it over and pass through the matching side of the tile bead on the opposite side of our strip. I'm going to then pass back through the set of size 15 seed beads so that we zip everything together. Then I want to end up through the tile bead. And that is what we end up with. I'm going to then add 1 size 15, 1 fire polish bead, and 1 size 15, pass through the next hole of our tile bead. Then I'm going to add another size 15, 1 fire polish, size 15, and pass down the next hole so that we end up with 2 sets right on top of each other. Then you're going to reinforce this once more by passing through all of these beads once again. We should end up with our thread coming right out of the tile bead after we've done reinforcing. Then we're going to pass back through the next set of size 15 seed beads, then up through the next tile bead on the row. Then you're going to repeat those steps on this tile bead as you've done here to add 2 fire polishes on each side. You're going to repeat that all the way around until you have fire polishes on all 4 tile beads. You may also need to switch to a smaller needle if you're having troubles getting through the size 15s in between the tile beads. And this is what you should end up with. You'll want to have your thread coming out of the fire polish bead. You're going to add 1 super duo, 1 size 11 seed bead, 1 super duo, and pass through to the next fire polish bead. Then you're going to repeat that all the way around until you've added all 4 corners, and then you're going to reinforce. And that is what you should end up with. Right now we're going to be working on the small spike bottom side. So if you want to use your mostly crystal side, this is the direction you're going to want to follow from the top and the bottom. But I'm just doing the crystals on the bottom. My thread is currently in between a fire polish and a super duo bead. What I'm going to do is pass through just this bottom hole of the super duo. Then I'm going to pass through the top hole of the very same super duo. This is going to change the direction of my thread. My thread is currently on top of a fire polish bead, so what I'm going to do is add 1 size 15, 1 11, and 1 size 15 and pass through the next super duo on the round. Now my thread is on top of a size 11 seed bead in between 2 super duos. So I'm going to add on 1 4mm bicone and pass through the next super duo. We're on top of a fire polish, so I'm going to add on 1 size 15, 1 size 11, 1 size 15, and pass through the next super duo. Then add 1 bicone and pass through the next super duo. Going to repeat that all the way around until we've completed our set. And this is what we end up with. Currently my thread is coming out of a super duo bead, so we're going to do something a little different in order to reinforce. We're going to pass through this next set of size 15, size 11, size 15, and the next super duo. Then I'm going to add 3 size 15s, 1 size 11, 3 size 15s. We're going to jump over the crystal and pass through the next super duo, and along again to the next super duo until we have ended up next to the crystal on the other side. So we're adding a covering on top of this crystal here. Once more, I'm going to add 3 size 15s, 1 size 11, 3 size 15s, jump over the crystal, and travel to the next crystal. Repeat that until you've covered the next 2 crystals. And that is what we end up with. Next, we want to end up through this size 11 seed bead in one of the centers of our lantern. Then I'm going to add 1 size 15, 1 fire polish, 1 size 15, and jump all the way over to the next size 11 seed bead on our round. So that we end up with a fire polish right behind our 4mm bicones. Going to repeat that all the way around until you have added all 3 fire polish beads. And that is what we end up with. Next, from the size 11 seed bead, I'm going to move over through the size 15 and through a fire polish bead to step up. Then I'm going to add the free hole of our little super duo cluster here and pass through the next fire polish bead so that we wedge the super duo right in between. From here, I add another super duo cluster and move to the next fire polish bead. Repeat that with the other 2 super duos. That is what you end up with. You have the little dangly parts dangling freely. You may want to reinforce this section once more because these segments are really heavy compared to the rest of the piece. We then want to end up coming out of a fire polish bead. Then we add 2 size 15s, 1 size 11, 2 size 15s, and pass back through the same fire polish bead so that we form a picot on top. Like so. That little segment of beads we just added wraps on top of the fire polish bead. Then I'm going to pass through the next duo and the fire polish bead and repeat. So I've got 2 size 15s, 1 size 11, 2 size 15s, and I'm going to pass back through the next fire polish bead. Travel to the next fire polish bead on the row and repeat. Do that for the next 2 fire polish beads. And that is what we end up with. From our fire polish bead, we're going to move immediately to the top and we're going to pass through 2 size 15s to get to the center size 11 seed bead. Like that. Then we're going to do a little figure 8 junction in order to add on our large spike bead. So my thread is coming out of the right side of the top size 11 seed bead. I'm going to pass my needle after I've added my big spike to the left side of the size 11 seed bead across the way. Pull tight and our spike starts to stand up in the center. Now my thread is coming on the right side of the bottom size 11 seed bead. I'm going to pass back through the spike and then through the left side of the size 11 seed bead that we started at. So that we end up with our spike bead right in the center and those 2 size 11 seed beads on either side of it. I'm going to repeat that once or twice so that I reinforce the spike and make sure it stays put. Then with my large spike nice and secure, I'm going to add on 3 size 15 seed beads and pick up the size 11 seed bead that we haven't touched yet. This will be on top of a fire polish bead. We're basically going to make a ring of seed beads that cage the spike in the center. I'm going to add on another 3 size 15 seed beads and pick up the next size 11 seed bead, which will be the other anchor point that we have attached the spike to. So now we have 2 pieces that attach the spike. Once more, add 3 more size 15s and pick up the next size 11 seed bead on our round. Add our final set of size 15 seed beads and pass through the size 11 seed bead that we started from so that we have our spike completely encircled. I'm going to reinforce this once or twice and make sure the spike doesn't move anywhere. After that, you can either end your thread, or if your thread is long enough, move all the way to the top of the fire polish beads on the other side of our pendant. So my thread is coming out of the top 4mm fire polish beads, and we're going to basically do the same exact thing that we did down here, except instead of doing the crystals, we're going to add spikes instead. So to get up to that point, I'm going to add one super duo, one size 11 seed bead, one super duo, and pass through the next fire polish bead on the round. Then repeat that until we have all 4 sets completed. Then, when I've added my 4th set, I'm going to go through the fire polish bead and the bottom hole of the next super duo. I'm going to then change direction by passing through the top hole of the same super duo bead. I'm going to start my pattern off by adding on one size 15, one size 11, one size 15, and pass through the top hole of the next super duo on the round. Like that, fire polish down here, my beads up here. I'm going to then add one baby spike bead, pass through the top hole of the next super duo bead, and repeat that pattern all the way around, like so. So next you're going to start off with the size 15, size 11, and size 15, and continue on from there. And that is what we end up with. Next I'm going to move over to the super duo next to my first spike bead here. So I'm going to pass through the size 15, size 11, size 15, and the next super duo. I'm going to then add 2 size 15 seed beads, 2 size 11 seed beads, and 2 size 15 seed beads. Make sure these beads fall on top of the spike and pass through the next super duo set. So I'm going to pass through a super duo, the size 15, size 11, and size 15, and the next following super duo, so that we form a cap on top of the spike. Repeat that all the way around until you've capped all 4 spike beads. And that is what we end up with. Next we want to end up with our thread coming out of a super duo right next to a spike bead. I'm going to then add on 8 size 15 seed beads, and I'm going to pass through the super duo across the way from the spike bead. This is going to add the bottom segment of our cage for our spike bead. Like so. Then pass to the next spike bead and repeat all the way around. And that is what you should end up with. Next, we're going to want to move down to the fire polish beads in the center of our piece here. So I'm going to move through to the super duo bead across the way, the top hole, then dig down and go to the bottom hole towards the center, like so, and through the adjacent fire polish bead. I'm going to then add a size 15, a 4mm bicone, a size 15, and pass through to the next fire polish bead. Like that. So we end up with the bicone behind the spike. We're going to repeat that all the way around until we've added 4 bicones. And that is what we end up with. Then we're going to step up by passing through the next size 15 and 4mm bicone. Going to add 1 super duo bead and pass through the next bicone. Like so, then repeat that by adding 1 super duo between each bicone. That is what you end up with. You may want to reinforce as well. Then you want to end up through the bottom hole of one of the super duos. We're going to set up for the next phase by passing through the top hole of the very same super duo. Then I'm going to add one of my color B super duos and pass through the top hole of the next adjacent super duo bead. And repeat that all the way around and reinforce, so that we end up with that little crown at the top. I'm going to end up through one of my color B super duo beads at the bottom hole, change direction by passing through the top hole of the same super duo bead. Then I'm going to add 1 size 15 seed bead and pass through the next super duo bead. Like so, and repeat that all the way around so that we've cinched the top together. And that is what we end up with. You'll want to end up with your thread coming out of the size 15 seed bead, and like we did with the spike down here, we're going to add a bicone and do the same figure 8 configuration. So, I'm coming out of the right side of the top, size 15, I'm going to pass through the left side of the one right across the way. From here, I'm going to pass back up through the bicone bead and pass through the left side of the bead that we started at. Then repeat once more in order to cinch it in place so that we have our bicone right on top. And everything is nice and secure like that. We're going to then end up coming out of our bicone bead so that we can start work on our bail. To do this, I'm going to add 3 size 15 seed beads and pass back down the bicone bead so that we end up with a picot sticking out of the other side. I'm going to add 3 more size 15 seed beads and go back through the bicone bead. Then you can reinforce this by passing through all of these beads once more. So you go from the bicone, you move to the 3 seed beads down, go over through the bicone again, over the seed beads up top, and go back down. You'll want to end up through the center of one of the sides once you have finished. So this is where I'm starting my next section. I'm at the center bead of the 3 seed beads here. I'm going to add 1 size 15, 1 bicone, and 3 size 15s and pass that down. Then I'm going to pass through the bicone once more so that I end up with the picot again at the top. I'm going to add 1 size 15 seed bead and pass through the opposite side of the anchor bead that we started from so that we complete our segment here. We're going to then reinforce by passing through these beads once more, and it will then end up through the top hole here of this bead in the center. Then you're going to repeat that step to add another 3 bicone beads. And that is what we end up with. Now to do our last stitch, we need to do something a little bit differently because we need to join it with the other side here of the first bicone. So I'm going to add 1 size 15, 1 bicone, and another size 15, and I'm coming from the left side of my anchor bead here, so I'm going to pass through the left side of the anchor bead on the opposite side here, so that we begin our join. I'm going to then add 1 size 15 seed bead and pass through the bicone we just added. Then I'm going to add 1 more size 15 seed bead and pass through the opposite side of the anchor point that we started from. You're going to then reinforce this once more to make sure this is cinched tight, and then end your thread. And there you will have your finished piece. This is fun to play around with colors. I could imagine this in blues or silvers or other golds would be cool too. And yes, just have fun with the techniques, play around with some shapes too. I think that will do it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed this Lessons with Odin. If you did, be sure to like up this video, and be sure to subscribe if you want more bullshit from me. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Be sure to check us out on Facebook from Creations from Lessons with Odin. We got a lovely little community that we like, and I'd like to see what you've made if you've decided to follow this tutorial, because I want to see what your color combinations are. And if you need more lessons with me, be sure to check out my Skillshare classes. There will be links down below for that as well. So, thank you guys so much for joining me. And of course, if there's anything I need to be trying out right now, feel free to let me know down below. And I will see you next time.